right, so you actually spoke on like moving to Atlanta within the first 9 months of your release. Um, First, we already kind of got like intel on how you were able to do that. Like you already had a plan, and you were very focused on carrying out your plan. So it's no question like how you were able to make that move in 9 months. But what I really want to know is once you got down there, like although you're a person who you weren't paying attention to the culture of Detroit for real, it's not something that really tickled your fancy. You still are a Detroiter and you still are of Detroit culture. So when you got to Atlanta, man, when it come to hip hop, they got their own scene. They like how New York is. They stubborn with it. Like, how is it that you were able to go down there and be accepted as an artist as fast as you were? Cause I seen somewhere you said it only took like a couple years of you being down there. So how are you able to be accepted in like the current mecca of hip hop, moving from a place like Detroit?
I would say the main thing that really got me into the focus point of what hip hop stemmed from in Atlanta versus what they had going on in Detroit was my story. When I got down there, I started networking with people immediately based off of where I was trying to go. I didn't let nothing necessarily hold me back. It wasn't like, oh, I needed to be like this, or I need this type of vibe, or I need this type of situation. I got down there immediately like, what's moving, what's shaking, what needs to happen, how does this need to work? So when I got down there, I went immediately into what the mecca of Atlanta generation or culture comes from, which was in the West End. And it was these lofts where everybody that you can name of from the top to the bottom, they've come through this little synergy point, and that's where it breaks off into everything else. So when I got down there, I went into the West End and I was like, okay, how am I really get my foot in the door? And I was like, I need to network with certain people. So I started networking with certain people, and my next door neighbor actually happened to be the producer of Love and Hip Hop. So that's what's gonna take it to a whole another level, because I'm in this building, he's in the next building next door to me, like literally the next door. So I go and I start networking with them as well. So as I'm networking with them, I start realizing that it's a whole world that I'm not even tapped in with, because these people is doing something on so much of a major level that even when I was in prison, I'm watching Love and Hip Hop and those type of things on the TV. So when I get there and I start networking, I'm like, okay, let me build this building and make it a home for me, and make it somewhere where people gotta come to see me, or where I can really work from, and I don't have to jump around from studio to studio and place to place and really have to do too much, versus if I build something to bring people to me. And that's kind of what me going through all the other things in life showed me, like, hey, build you a home base and make the people feel culturally accepted, like you're from here. So when I got there, I completely made it as if I've been here all my life. You couldn't tell me I wasn't from Atlanta, because I embraced the lingo, I embraced the situations, I embraced who was moving and shaking, I embraced everything. I didn't go down there to get into the hood or to get into the violence or any of the things that you could talk about is the culture for the black community. I went strictly for music. And when I went for music, it was like everything was opening up to me, because everybody only knew me for that.
So did you end up getting casted on Love and Hip Hop through your relationship with the producer?
And that's a part that came into it. So what started happening is, because I was the next door neighbor, it was like, hey, we about to be filming. So now I'm at all of the Love and Hip Hop shows. So I'm actually networking with them. Now, mind you, during this time, I'm still a baby in it. I don't know nothing about the music for real. I don't know how to really maneuver and network through it because this is literally 9 months after me getting into the first studio session of my life. So by the time I get there and I start networking with them, it was more so like, hey, let me be around the culture. Let me be entangled. And I was more of a student to the game versus me being like, hey, I'm this artist, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. People didn't even know I was doing music. They just knew I was around them and I was there for a reason because I was getting gifted in by somebody who was doing the music for sure and doing the whole cultural thing with love and hip hop. So the whole time I was just getting positions to fit in to everything that was going on. So it's like that's how me and Waka Flocka, Stevie J, just the whole love and hip hop crew on the basis to where it's like I can call them or we can pull up somewhere because they seeing me around them every day. Not even talking about no music.
Right.
We just talking about business and what's going on.
And I would say you were probably like in the midst of like the most star power love and hip hop cast that I've ever seen. Like out of all the love and hip hops, Atlanta is probably like the
biggest one.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest one.
Definitely.
Like where like even like the brands and the artists and the people that within the show, like I would think that's the biggest one for sure.
No,
So,
it definitely is. I mean, and you can tell from watching it. You can probably go to their ratings and see Love and Hip Hop Atlanta was huge and still is. Like, it's one of them things that I couldn't account for how I really got into it and really was able to move. And then once people started really paying attention to who I was, it was like, oh, now it ain't just, oh, this guy's just around. He really moving and shaking. He really trying to get this stuff out the mud and get it just like everybody else. But he's not forcing it on nobody. I'm not walking up to Waka or walking up to Stevie J like, here, check out my... I'm literally around them like I'm them. You know what I mean? I built the mentality in my head like, move like they moving. Shake like they shaking. If they can afford to go out these places, you make your way to get out those places. A lot of the times it was like, hey, just come along. Because I was just a come along type of situation. It wasn't me affording everything and me having to stand on my own 10 to do everything. It was like, just fit in. If you can fit in, you're going to have no choice but to win eventually because you building relationships with these people to where it's like, now they know you by name. Now they know you by character. Now they know how you move. They know you not into nothing and they know you not green either because you really moving strategically and you popping up to certain things and you going to certain locations and you not just dubbing out on some fanny stuff. It was like, these guys, I grew up on these guys. I was fans of these people, you know what I mean? And now I'm in a situation where I'm like toe to toe with them and we talking about stuff that they would never talk about with a regular person that's a fan of theirs because it's like, oh, I know this dude. He be around all the time. So it was letting me learn the game and what they went through, what failures they had, what situations they went through because they were talking to me the same way we talking in the interview like we've been knowing each other forever because it was organic.